Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 2 finale, maybe even series finale of Call of the Night. Talk about that later. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I think it's interesting that this episode... I think season 1's finale kind of played a similar role where it was kind of almost like this epilogue, but I feel like this is kind of even more of an epilogue than season 1's finale, because like those all of it kind of has led up to this moment, kind of like reaching kind of this pseudo conclusion to this part of like Ko and Nazuna's story, as well as like Anko, because she's kind of been like the primary antagonist of the story. So it kind of feels like an epilogue there. That's where I kind of get into the feeling of, well, is this the end? Is it not? Like I said, I'll get to that later when I go through the breakdown of the episode. But we're picking up after last episode where Nazuna and Ko are hanging out with Anko, and they take her back to Nazuna's place to let her kind of like sleep it off because she's drunk, and she kept knocking back drinks despite being the lightweight that she is. And because of that, she's kind of a hot mess, and her head hurts, and she feels sick, and she wants some water. And Ko and Nazuna were going to go until Anko was like, I got money. I want a cuddle partner in this moment. And Nazuna kind of lit up and was like, cool, grabbed the money and took off. I mean, she's not too keen on it being Ko, but I think the main thing is like, oh, I need to rush there and get back. But also, like, I think she's excited because it's like, hey, who knows when's the last time, at least even in an anime, the last time we actually saw Nazuna do her job, you know? But Ko's just in this awkward position of kind of, what do I do? And then Anko's like, okay, talk to me about something. And he's like, oh, this is a story. And she's like, you want to die? He's basically telling her his story, everything he's experienced over last season and this season, and all the experiences he's had and all the people he's met, you know, and just kind of the interesting experience it's been all around. I love that. Like, even like the one or two off characters, like some drunk adults that he ran into from time to time. The lady he like first met when he first found out about Nazuna's like cuddle job, and it's like, yeah, because they've only met twice, but I mean, maybe they met more in the manga because I've talked about it before. I believe I brought this up in season 1 when I looked it up, but season 1 did skip over some chapters, and I'm sure this definitely skipped over chapters too, so some of those characters might have had reappearances and further exploration of their stories. Maybe not. But his experiences with everything kind of leading him up to where he is now, and he's just kind of grateful for the experiences, you know, to kind of get to where he is now. And it's this really heartbreaking moment with him and Anko where she's breaking down. You know, she kind of forces the angle of like, it's like, well, you're not going to cuddle me, so I'm going to cuddle you. But it's because for her, it's like, I haven't slept beside someone in so long, because like, what is a normal life? Like, how she's like, I spent so long hunting down vampires, and that's all kind of a moot point now. But she's like, I dedicated like a decade of my life to do that, and now that I am like, what is my life after all of that? Like, that's the only thing that kept me going, because she's like, I know like my issue was with the vampire is the reason why life fell apart, but she's like, at the end of the day, it started because of my own father's infidelity. She's like, logically I understood that, but I needed something to be my enemy. I needed to take my anger out, my sadness out on something, because it was my only way to live. And now it's like, now that I have like, what is these 10 years? I've dedicated a decade of my life towards this like act of vengeance, going after vampires, and what does it amounted to? Especially because my plan amounted to nothing, and here I am. So it's like, how do I like, what do I do? Like, you know, I can't like, because everyone else who's had a life, they have friends, they go to work, they do this, like just the normal things in life, and she hasn't had any of that, because she's led this like very like anger and sad driven, you know, revenge plot, and it's never allowed her to like properly connect with anyone. This is the first time she's ever really connected with anyone in that decade, because she's just been all consumed by her mission. And it's like, what else is there for her? And Ko like patting her and kind of holding her until she fell asleep. And you know, even Ko's asking Nazuna later on, like, what is a normal life? Like, you know, but it's like, you know, because he's like, yeah, Anko or Kyoko wants to live the detective wants to live a normal life, but Nazuna's like, yeah, but she was never normal. Like, yeah, vampires entered her life, but even if vampires had never entered her life, like Kyoko's life would have always been weird. She's just like you, Ko, you were always going to be, you're always a weirdo. And even bringing in like Akira and Mahiru, and he's like, what? Those two sure are weirdos, but me, like, he's like, I'm pretty normal. And just Nazuna's like, I bet all three of you are thinking ahead about each other. I mean, when we look at like the way Akira and Mahiru have like interacted with just the circumstances of everything, kind of showcases they were always bound to be weird. But I love that Nazuna's like, yeah, given enough time, hopefully you become okay with realizing it's okay to not be normal. Like, you're not normal is kind of a good thing, you know? So obviously they're hanging out a little bit because they don't want to go back and, want to give Anko or Kyoko more time just to like sleep off some stuff. And so they end up going to the maid cafe. Nazuna gets thrown into working there, which I love that the customer, she's like, hey, yo, like, can you at least give me some of that beer? And the guy's like, okay, sure. And she chugs it out. He's like, yo, the whole thing. And then there's Ko talking to LG, and LG's happy to be there and stuff. And I love that conversation where he was like, what does it take to kind of work at a place like this? And he's like, oh, it's a good question, but not all good questions have a good answer, or something like that, getting all like mysterious and stuff. But Midori talks about like, right, you kind of have to have a certain personality, have to be like a very friendly person, maybe even like beer and stuff. And it's like, well, all the stuff that Nazuna is. I almost wondered if Ko was almost hoping to try and get Anko a job here. That's what it almost felt like. I'm like, oh, to try and give her a sense of normalcy, you were trying to get her a job here. But that doesn't seem to be the case. But it's just like when he's looking at it and just seeing like how Nazuna just fits the bill of like, despite her personality and stuff and how much she'd probably fight against it, she really is good at this job, and it is built for someone like her. So hanging out with Midori to go meet up with the other vampires. Kabura is supposed to come over later, but they're all just kind of talking, and Akun is here as well, and it leads to this interesting back and forth about like everyone's offsprings, because it's like because we haven't met any of Kabura's offspring, which I think it's interesting. I don't think we never met any of Nico's either, but obviously we met Hatsuka's, we met obviously the most important ones for Siri, and obviously the most important one for Midori. And that becomes this whole conversation about like, oh, should we meet, like, we should meet LG. And she's like, no. But because she brought it up earlier in this season, like, oh, but I want to kind of keep him to myself, because if you meet LG, you'll fall for it. Everyone will start liking him and stuff like that. But Siri's like, yo, look at me. Like, I brought mine. Like, Akun is actually sitting here with us. But then they also bring up, it's like kind of interesting that even though he's not Nazuna's offspring, they kind of met Ko before they met anyone else, and it kind of turns into this conversation of who tried to seduce him first, like get to know him first. Like Siri's like, oh, I approached him first, but then Kabura's like, oh yeah, but I knew of his existence first because she kept an eye on Nazuna, and Nazuna's like, oh, that's so creepy, like I didn't even know you were watching me. It's like, yeah, I was, I just knew there was a boy you were hanging out with and you were drinking his blood, because she's like, I knew that you were just like how you were getting your blood up until now, is like you were drinking it off some drunks. I'm assuming those 3 drunks were constantly seen throughout the series. And she's like, that's creepy. It's like, what are you, my mom? And then it's kind of get awkward. It's like, for all intents and purposes, she kind of became your, she's not your stepmom. She's the mom that stepped up type of situation. I mean, she was left to you by your actual mom. So I just think that's fascinating. But then it becomes this interesting conversation, and this kind of lends itself to like the epilogue conversation I was having earlier, where I think it was Siri making reference to like the fact is that Nazuna's in the next chapter of her life, because they're talking, Nazuna and Ko are in the next chapter of their lives, because a conversation comes up about like, okay, so where's your progress with Ko? And she's like, progress, and she starts like getting embarrassed and stuff like that. So they're kind of living it up and enjoying it, which kind of got Ko thinking like, these type of nights, the detective wanted quiet nights, and he's just kind of like, yeah, she got what she wanted. He's almost thinking like, is this like what I wanted? Like things to kind of continue as they are. Like I think he's probably second guessing, like not necessarily that like Anko was like 100% right, but just kind of wondering like, is this the right direction for things to kind of be going? Is this the type of night I want to continue, and stuff like that? And kind of, I think, maybe from an existential standpoint, kind of wondering your place in the world across all of this. And he brings up something interesting where Ko's like, I want to find the vampire that basically ruined Anko's life. It's like, I want to track them down because I don't want Kyoko to feel like the past 10 years were for nothing. Like, if I can help her in any shape or form get some form of closure, maybe that'll be better. And I do love that we cut back to Anko and she's about to start smoking, but she doesn't. So it's like kind of leave, and especially at this time because she doesn't have her glasses either, because I think Nazuno might have still had them. I don't remember. I don't think she put them on by the end of the episode. And it's like, it makes a lot of sense considering, like, I wonder, Kyoko's dead, so she can't probably ever go back to being Kyoko. She'll always just be Anko going forward. But it's like probably about trying to find peace with that, finding your way forward as Anko, because Kyoko died, but kind of coming to terms with that. But it's like, that's how I'm viewing it. But I'm like, can she ever go back to being Kyoko? Is that even possible to kind of pick your life up, considering like Kyoko, like I said, died 10 years ago and you've been Anko for the past 10 years living that life. And it's like, do you try to go back? But it's like, there is no going back. All you can do is go forward. But the question is, does she go forward as Kyoko or Anko? That's, I think, a very existential question that the show doesn't quite answer, because I think like she's figuring it out, So either way, with all of this said and done, Nazuna and Ko decide to leave. And they're like, oh, you're leaving so soon? Like, I'll stay with us, have a drink. Or in fact, how about you guys make it out in front of us? And Nazuna's like, nah, we're not going to do that. Come on, stop teasing me so much. And the rest of the crew's like, oh. And so her and Ko take off, but they're like, wow, Nazuna would usually kind of like submit to our teasing. Like, have we teased her too much? Because she normally just kind of kiss just to kind of shut us up. But it's like, no, she's reached a point where it's like, it's such an intimate thing between her and Ko. They're in such an intimate place now. Like, I don't want to share that in front of anyone anymore. It wasn't just about kissing. I think it was also like just drinking his blood. It's like, it's such an intimate thing. And the others kind of understand that now. And they're thinking that's a beautiful thing. Because it's like, it's just showing how much Nazuna's grown and how much this relationship with Ko has meant so much to her. It's like, I want it to be our thing. I don't want to just do it in front of other people. She's not the public display of affection type. Especially now that it's become so much that it means so much. So obviously for Ko, it's just like him and Nazuna by themselves, and the conversation of hanging out, partying it up like that every once in a while is fine, but doing it too repeatedly would make it boring. So it's kind of like, going out there, finding other things to do and just having each other, which obviously for Ko, it's like meeting her is kind of like one of the great things, and he's really thankful for it, which, public, like, romance stuff like that, like romantic and sweet stuff like that, threw her off balance. So she ended up dropping him, but luckily caught him. It's like, yo, like, get it together. And he's just like, yeah, sorry about that. But he's like, the good thing about it is I get to see your blushing face like straight on, because you usually turn away from me, so I never really get to see it like this. But then they stop on the rooftop before they go back to Anko, and they have a moment where she's just kind of like, right, I want to do this by ourselves, and bites into his neck, and that's where the episode ends. I do think it's interesting, like, the show plays the ending from this season through, like, that little bit last section of it, and then the actual ending of the show is the first ending from season 1. We're like, oh, that is interesting, because that song is called, literally, Call of the Night, so it is poetic to go back to it. Plus, they also included, like, some extra images that, to my recollection, were not in, like, the first season's ending, like the last shot of, like, it looks like it might be like, I don't know if that's straight out of the manga or is like more closer to what she looks like in the manga, but like that last picture of Nazuna before it goes to like the spinning record at the end of the ending. But like, I don't remember that being, and even it might, because it ends on like a different image. It's like Nazuna and some stuff, some liquids, if I remember correctly. So this is where we get into the larger conversation I was having earlier about what does this mean for the series? Can there be a season 3? Maybe, maybe not. This is where I kind of got confused in my whole Googling efforts, because so I think I brought it up earlier that I talked about in season 1, they skipped a few chapters, but for the most part, it covers up to chapter 46. In total, there are 200 chapters for the Call of the Night manga. some stuff I was reading because not conflicting information, but I just couldn't parse out stuff without going into spoilers. So I just said, fuck it. And I read some of how it ends. I'm not going to spoil it here for anyone that's curious, but I don't know all the steps that get there. But this is where my confusion comes into place, because I think essentially like the manga, this anime was speed running through to basically kind of get like Anko has been kind of like this narrative through line that the anime was trying to get through. So like this chunk of the story, I don't think is the entire manga, because I was reading some of the stuff leading up to them into the manga. I was like, okay, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, that didn't happen. Like I said, I didn't know everything that happened, but like a great example is like, it's a spoiler that it comes back, but obviously it's a narrative thing they set up, and just the question is like, if they're going to pull the trigger on it. The whole thing with Ko surviving the bullet and like him temporarily becoming a vampire is the reason why he survived and everything. That is a more relevant thing for Ko in the future. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if like the anime like shortcut some stuff to kind of, I don't think this is supposed to be like the end. Like I think this is like a narrative ending that exists in the manga, but it's not the actual ending of the manga, because I do believe there's arcs after this and stuff, to my understanding. Like, and especially like I said, leading up to where the manga, so like I said, I'm trying not to go into too many details because I don't want to spoil things for someone. I still want to read the manga just to understand like how we got to there, but like, I don't know how much this season skipped. Like I said, 46 is roughly where the first season ends, leaving like, 150 some left. But then like, there's a whole bunch of stuff they skipped. Apparently they moved stuff around because it's all supposed to be like the continued narrative of like everything that it's heading and concluding with like the Anko story, concluding where it has. It's all been leading up to that narratively, so... Because I think the Anko shooting him thing was like chapter 89, I think. From what I was reading, like I said, I was trying to sparse out stuff without going into spoilers. So I don't know how much of the second season like of the manga got covered in the anime. So, but like I said, there's so much narrative stuff that I'm like, it's a fine spot to end things off, but there's still more story. It just seems like this is one of those anime situations where it's like, no, it's not going to cover the entire manga. You want to know the story of where things go, you have to read the manga. To be fair, too, because I don't know, like I said, Googling stuff is weird because of that AI overview. Some stuff was saying like, oh, there's not enough material for there to be a third season, which I don't know if that's true. I that's why I was like, I don't know if that was like conflicting information about a different series, or whether it seemed like it was in reference to Call of Night, saying like there's not enough to fit into a third season, but maybe like conclude things in a movie. But with some of the story stuff I was reading, I was like, would that not fit into a third season? So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, based on what people were saying, and this is before I think season 2 aired, or maybe it's like when season 2 airing, people were saying like, if you wanted to kind of comfortably adapt this, like be like 4 or 5 seasons to comfortably adapt everything. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. I also I looked into without going into spoilers, but it is a sequel. The sequel manga is called Call of the Night Paradise Arc. That is not like a long running continued series. It's already done. It ended like late last month. It was only like 8 chapters or something. It kind of was meant to coincide with the release of the second season, but also, so it's kind of almost promotional material, but it does serve as a sequel to the end of the manga. It's just not, it's meant to be like a temporary sequel, kind of picking up some of those threads and kind of giving you the short story, kind of coinciding with like the anime second season. So, because I assumed like when I found out that there was a sequel manga, I was like, oh, I guess the story's just continuing. It's like, no, it was just a short thing that's already done. So, like I said, I think this is just one of those situations where like the anime is done and then like you'd have to read the manga. You'd have to probably go back because apparently like there are some pretty important chapters. Even during season 1, they kind of skipped over story beats that are pretty important. So, but it's just like the anime was trying to condense and like speed run to like keep like some narrative threads, because it does seem like it's just like like there's probably like in between like some of these like important character growth moments and storylines and stuff like that, there is like these connective like narrative threads, like the whole Anko thing, like, because even that's left open-ended, because you're like, they want to find the person who like basically ruined Anko's life. My money was always on Kiku, but I'm also wondering, like, are we gonna find out like Kiku's the obvious red herring that because of her whole shtick of like having like over like 50 offspring, it's not actually her. It might be some other vampire we've never met, or I mean, with the story being what it is, you never know. There might be narrative threads to be like, oh, it actually is someone we know, and we just don't realize it or correlate that. So like I said, I don't know if this is meant to kind of serve as a pseudo representation of the ending of the manga, even though it's not the ending at all. Especially how things play out. So like I said, it's more so like you have to read the manga to get the conclusion. So this kind of serves as a series finale. So I don't know what I'm going to label this. Either I'm going to keep it as a season 2 finale, because just in case they do decide to make a third season, because I do feel like there's enough to go with a third season. And in all fairness, there's a massive gap in between season 1 and season 2. Like, it took 3 years for season 2 to come out, and apparently it wasn't announced that there was going to be a season 2 until like a year ago. So it's like, well, I think I was reading like a year and 6 months in between the season 1 finale and then the announcement that they're making a season 2. So there could be just as much of a gap in between season 3 if there's going to be one. So for now, I might label it as a season 2 finale, but I can always just like, I mean, it also fits narratively speaking, considering like, well, it's not the end of the story. Maybe it's the end of the anime, but there's still more story to tell, so you have to read the manga, which I really want to consider that. But like I said, it might be worth starting it from the beginning, retreading some old ground, sure, but there's going to be plenty of interesting stories and tidbits and elements that probably got skipped over, or maybe some stuff that's explored more in the manga than it is in the anime. So that's currently where I'm standing with all of this. Like I said, I hope things do change and we do get a third season, because I love this series. I think I didn't know what to fully expect going into it, because obviously I started the first season, so I didn't have the large weight because I started the first season this year. So it didn't take too long for me to like finish season 1 and then roll straight into season 2, because like it was already started airing by the time like I completely caught up. I think I was already caught up before season 2 started airing. Season 2 started airing while I was putting the episodes out, though. Either way, that's kind of a behind-the-scenes thing. But, it ended up being this cute story, like, because I do like the Nazuna and Ko, like, development and romance, and just, like, their growth as individuals, but also as a pair, but also these other characters we come to know, but also, like, how, like, on a dime, this story could get, like, serious and dark. It seemed like all kind of funs and game and random night shenanigans, and then you get some, like, dark storyline stuff here and there. So yeah, like I really enjoy this story, and I'm really interested to kind of see how it continues and eventually conclude it with the manga. So that'll kind of be my next step at some point in the future. So in case this is the end, obviously, if we don't get another season, I want to thank everyone for putting this this series on my radar by becoming an anime. I think that helps out a lot of people find out about a series or manga or anything that they might not have been aware of existed in the first place. So obviously thankful to the animators, the writers, the directors. Obviously, massive shout out to Kotoyama, the mangaka who made the series in the first place. So to everyone involved, I wish them the best in their future endeavors. Hopefully those endeavors include a third season of Call of the Night, but if it doesn't, whatever those endeavors may be, I wish everyone the best. So yeah, I've run my mouth off very, very much long enough, but the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.